Story Fragments of Sterling.
The silence was the first thing I noticed. It wasn't the peaceful, heavy silence of a library or the comfortable quiet of a sleeping house. It was a sterile, sharp silence, broken only by the rhythmic, mechanical hiss-click of a machine breathing somewhere to my left. I tried to open my eyes, but my eyelids felt like they were weighted down with lead coins. There was a smell, antiseptic, floor wax, and something metallic like old pennies. It was the smell of trauma. Genevieve? The voice was distant, muffled, as if coming through a thick wall of water. It was a voice I knew better than my own. Harrison. I forced my eyes open. The light was blinding, a harsh fluorescent blare that sent a spike of agony straight through my skull. I groaned, a dry, rasping sound that barely escaped my throat. "She's waking up," Harrison said. His voice sounded tight, clipped, not relieved, just tense. As my vision cleared, the white blur coalesced into shapes. The IV stand, the generic abstract art on the wall, and Harrison, standing at the foot of the bed. He looked impeccable, as always. His charcoal suit was wrinkle-free, his tie perfectly knotted, his blonde hair swept back in that effortless way that cost $100 at the barger. But his face was a mask of terrified politeness. "Harry?" I whispered. He didn't come to my side. He didn't take my hand. He stayed at the foot of the bed, gripping the plastic rails so hard his knuckles were white. "You've been out for 3 days, Jen," he said. He looked at the door, as if planning an escape route. "The doctors, they said it was a miracle you didn't have brain damage." What happened? I tried to move, and that's when the reality of my body screamed at me. A wave of pain, hot and jagged, shot up from my lower body. I gasped, tears instantly springing to my eyes. I looked down. My legs were hidden under a heavy thermal blanket, but the shape was wrong. There was a cage, a metal fixator, visible even through the fabric around my left leg. And the right one? It felt numb, terrifyingly numb. "The gala," Harrison said, his voice void of emotion. "It was raining. You were driving the Mercedes. The truck, it hydroplaned across the median. You swerved." The memories crashed into me like broken glass. The windshield wipers fighting the torrential downpour, the headlights of the oncoming semi-truck, the screech of metal, the world spinning, and then the crushing darkness. Am I going to walk?" I asked, my voice trembling. Harrison finally looked me in the eye. For a second, I saw pity. But underneath the pity, I saw something that chilled me to the bone. I saw inconvenience. "They did surgery on your spine, Jen, and they reconstructed your left leg. It's going to be a very long road." The doctor said we shouldn't focus on the if right now. We should focus on the recovery. He was using his boardroom voice, the voice he used when he had to fire someone but wanted to make it sound like a restructuring opportunity. That was the moment my life split into 2 distinct eras, before the accident and after. Before, I was Genevieve Sterling. I was 34 years old, the youngest partner at Sterling & Vance, the city's most prestigious architectural firm. My life was a series of perfectly curated squares on Instagram. I designed minimalist, high-end spaces for tech billionaires. I wore heels that cost more than most people's rent. I ran 5 miles every morning at 5 a.m. I was engaged to Harrison, a corporate litigator who looked good on my arm and even better on paper. We were the power couple. We were invincible. Now, I was a patient in room 402. I was a collection of broken bones and severed nerves. The weeks in the hospital were a blur of humiliation and agony. I had to learn to accept help for everything: eating, bathing, using the bathroom. For a woman who prided herself on absolute control, it was a special kind of hell. Harrison visited, of course. He came every evening at 6:30 p.m., staying for exactly 45 minutes. He brought flowers, lilies, which I hated because they smelled like funerals, and he sat in the chair by the window, scrolling through his emails while I stared at the ceiling. The wedding, I mentioned one evening, about 3 weeks in, we were supposed to get married in Tuscany in 6 months. Harrison stopped scrolling. He didn't look up immediately. He took a long, slow breath. Jen, let's not worry about logistics right now. It's not logistics, Harrison. It's our wedding. He finally looked at me. Genevieve, look at you. You can't. I mean, how would you even get down the aisle? We can't have a wedding while you're in a wheelchair. It would look what? I challenged him, feeling a spark of my old fire. Sad? Pathetic? It wouldn't be the day we planned, he said smoothly. I've already called the planner. We've put a pin in it. Indefinitely. Indefinitely. The word hung in the air like toxic smoke. The breaking point didn't come in the hospital, though. It came when I was discharged. I was supposed to go back to our penthouse, a stunning, multi-level apartment in the city center, a place I had designed myself. Floating staircases, sunken living rooms, narrow hallways lined with art. It was a masterpiece of design. It was also a death trap for a woman who couldn't walk. I was sitting in the wheelchair by the hospital entrance, waiting for Harrison to bring the car. When the black SUV pulled up, he got out, looking stressed. He opened the passenger door. I can't lift you, Jen, he said, gesturing to the seat. You know my back isn't great. The orderly will have to do it. I gritted my teeth as a stranger lifted me into my fiancé's car. The drive was silent, but instead of turning toward the city, Harrison took the exit toward the suburbs. Where are we going? I asked, gripping the handle above the door. We need to talk, he said. I didn't want to do this at the hospital. He pulled into a scenic overlook, the city skyline glittering in the distance. It was the kind of spot where teenagers went to make out, or where people went to break hearts. I can't take you back to the penthouse, Harrison said, staring out the windshield. It's not equipped, and honestly, Jen, I'm not equipped. What are you saying? My heart hammered against my ribs, harder than it had during the crash. I'm a lawyer, Genevieve. I work 80 hours a week. I need a partner who can keep up. I can't come home and be a nurse. It's not fair to me, and it's not fair to you to have me resent you. Resent me? I whispered. Harrison, I almost died. I need you, he said, and for the first time, he looked genuinely sad, or maybe just guilty. And that pressure, it's too much. I love the woman you were, Jen, but this situation, it's not what I signed up for. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a brochure. I've arranged for a stay at a rehabilitation center. It's top tier. I'll pay for everything. After that, well, you have your Aunt Cordelia's property out in the valley, don't you? It's a single story. It would be better for you. He was dumping me. He was dumping me and shipping me off to the countryside like a broken piece of furniture that no longer matched the decor. I looked at the diamond ring on my finger. It felt heavy, like a shackle. I pulled it off. It took some effort because my hands were still swollen from the medication. I placed it on the dashboard. Take me to the center, I said, my voice cold and dead. And then, Harrison, never let me see your face again. 6 months later, the rain battered against the windows of the Willows, my great-aunt Cordelia's old estate. It wasn't really an estate anymore. It was a sprawling, neglected Victorian cottage surrounded by an overgrown garden that looked more like a jungle. I sat in my wheelchair in the center of the dusty living room, a blanket draped over my legs. The accident had left me with limited sensation from the waist down. I could feel pressure and sometimes phantom pains that felt like fire ants, but I couldn't stand. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Harrison was gone. My career was gone. My friends, the brunch crowd, had stopped texting after the first month. Apparently, tragedy is contagious, and nobody wanted to catch it. I was alone. Just me, the creaking house, and the ghosts of the life I used to have. Miss Sterling? A deep voice startled me. I spun the wheelchair around, a maneuver I had finally mastered, to face the open back door. A man was standing there, dripping wet. He wore muddy work boots, worn-out jeans, and a flannel shirt that had seen better days. He had dark, messy hair plastered to his forehead by the rain, and he was holding a toolbox. "Who are you?" I demanded, clutching my cardigan tighter around me. "How did you get in?" "Knocked 3 times, but the storm drowned it out," he said, stepping inside and wiping his boots on the mat. "Door was unlocked. I'm Sebastian. The agency sent me. You requested a contractor to widen the bathroom doorways." "Oh," I said, deflating. "Right, I forgot." Sebastian looked around the room. He didn't look at my wheelchair. He didn't look at my legs. He looked at the peeling wallpaper and the water stain on the ceiling. "Nice bones," he commented. "This house, it's got a soul. A bit bruised, but it's there." I scoffed. "It's a ruin, just like its owner." Sebastian looked at me then. His eyes were a startling shade of amber brown, warm and intelligent. He didn't flinch at my bitterness. He actually smiled, a crooked, dry smile. "Ruins are interesting, Miss Sterling. New buildings are boring. They haven't survived anything yet. Ruins have stories." He walked past me toward the hallway. "I'll get started on the bathroom. Don't want you scraping your knuckles every time you need to brush your teeth." That was the beginning of Sebastian. He came every day for 3 weeks. First, it was the doorways. Then, he noticed the ramp the previous contractor had built was too steep and unsafe, so he tore it down and built a beautiful, gradual wooden walkway that blended into the porch. He wasn't like the men I used to know. He didn't talk about stocks or mergers. He talked about wood grain, about the weather, about the history of the valley. He was rough around the edges, but he moved with a gentle precision that fascinated me. One afternoon, I was sitting on the porch, staring blankly at the overgrown garden. The weeds were waist-high. It was a chaotic mess. Sebastian came out, wiping sawdust from his hands. He handed me a mug of tea. He had started doing that, making tea without asking. "You used to be an architect, right?" he asked, leaning against the railing. "How did you know?" "Googled you," he admitted shamelessly. "Saw the articles. The Queen of Minimalism, Genevieve Sterling, designing the future." He gestured to the wild garden. "Must drive you crazy, looking at this mess." "It does," I admitted. "I used to control every line, every shadow in a room. Now I can't even reach the top shelf to get a vase." "So, design this," he said, waving his hand at the yard. "I can't garden, Sebastian. I can't kneel. I can't walk through the mud." "I didn't say garden. I said design. You're the brain. Be the architect. I'll be the hands. I'm a fair carpenter, but I'm a terrible landscaper. I don't know a peony from a petunia, but you do." I looked at him. He was serious. "Why would you do that?" I asked suspiciously. "I'm only paying you for the house repairs." Sebastian shrugged. "I like to see things grow. And frankly, Genevieve, you look like you're fading away in that chair. It pisses me off." His bluntness was like a slap in the face, but it was exactly what I needed. Harrison had treated me like glass. Sebastian treated me like a person who needed a kick in the rear. "Fine," I said, narrowing my eyes. "But if we do this, we do it my way. No chaotic patches. Structure, lines, accessibility." "Deal," he grinned. The next few months were a revelation. I started sketching again. At first, my hands shook. The trauma of the accident seemed to vibrate in my fingertips, but slowly, the lines became steady. I designed raised flower beds that I could reach from my chair. I designed wide, paved paths that curved through the property like ribbons of stone. I created a sanctuary. Sebastian executed every drawing with frightening accuracy. We argued constantly. "That stone is too gray," I'd yell from the porch. "It needs to be warmer." "It's slate, Jen. It's supposed to be gray," he'd yell back, wiping sweat from his forehead, but he'd change it. We spent hours together. I learned that Sebastian was a widower. His wife had died of cancer 5 years ago. He had been a structural engineer in the city before she got sick. After she passed, he couldn't handle the noise, so he moved here to work with his hands. "We're both refugees from our own lives," he told me one evening as we sat by a fire he'd built in the living room hearth. The house was renovated now, warm, accessible, and filled with my sketches. "I thought my life was over," I confessed, watching the flames. "When Harrison left, when I realized I might never walk again, I felt like I had died in that car." Sebastian reached out and covered my hand with his. His palm was rough, calloused, and incredibly warm. "You didn't die, Genevieve. You just shed a skin. The woman you are now, she's stronger than the one who designed penthouses for billionaires." I looked at him, and for the first time in a year, I didn't feel broken. I felt seen. I leaned in, and the kiss happened naturally. It wasn't like the polished, perfect kisses with Harrison. It tasted like wood smoke and tea and longing. It was real. My recovery defied expectations. With the garden to tend to, I was moving more, twisting, reaching, strengthening my core. I started physical therapy with a renewed ferocity. I wasn't doing it to get back into high heels. I was doing it so I could reach the climbing roses on the trellis Sebastian had built. Within a year, I could stand with a cane, I could walk short distances, and then the past came knocking. I had started a blog about adaptive design, the accessible aesthetic. It had gone viral. I was getting interview requests. I was designing a line of furniture for people with mobility issues. I was successful again, but on my own terms. A black SUV pulled into the driveway of the Willows. I was in the garden, pruning the hydrangeas, balancing on my cane. Sebastian was near the shed, fixing the mower. Harrison stepped out of the car. He looked exactly the same. Perfect suit, perfect hair, but he looked tired. "Genevieve," he said, walking up the stone path. He stopped, looking around in amazement. "This place, it's incredible. I saw the article in Architectural Digest. You've done wonders." "Hello, Harrison," I said calmly. I didn't feel the old panic. I just felt a mild curiosity, like looking at an old photograph of a stranger. "You're standing," he noted, his eyes widening. "I am." He took a step closer. "Jen, I've made a mistake, a huge mistake." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh?" "I panicked," he said, using his best courtroom persuasion voice. "I was weak, I admit it, but seeing you now, seeing what you've built, I realize how special you are. I want you back, Jen. I want us to try again. I've missed you." He reached for my hand. "Don't," I said sharply. "Jen, please. We were the perfect team. We can be again. I can help you take this brand global. We can move back to the city. I'll buy a place that works for you." I looked at him. I looked at the man who had left me when I was unable to feed myself. The man who loved me only when I was a trophy. Then I looked over his shoulder. Sebastian was standing by the shed. He wasn't coming over. He was leaning on a shovel, watching me. He was giving me the choice. He respected me enough to let me fight my own battles. I turned back to Harrison. "You're right, Harrison. We were a team based on vanity and convenience." "That's not fair." "It is entirely fair," I cut him off. "You loved me because I reflected your success back at you. When I shattered, I couldn't do that anymore, so you threw me away. I took a step forward, leaning on my cane, standing tall. I am not the same woman, Harrison. That woman died on the wet asphalt. The woman standing in front of you has survived hell. She has learned that love isn't about looking perfect together at a gala. It's about who builds you a ramp when you can't walk. It's about who stays when the walls are crumbling. I gestured to the gate. Go back to the city, Harrison. Go find someone perfect. I'm happy with my ruins. Harrison stood there, stunned. He opened his mouth, closed it, and then realized he had lost. Really lost. He turned and walked back to his car. As the SUV drove away, the tension left my shoulders. Sebastian walked over. He didn't say anything. He just stood next to me, looking at the dust settling on the driveway. "You okay?" he asked quietly. "I'm better than okay," I said, turning to look at him. "I'm home." I dropped my cane to the grass and took a wobbly step toward him. He caught me immediately, his strong arms wrapping around my waist, holding me up. "I've got you," he whispered into my hair. "I know," I replied. It has been 3 years since the accident. I still have a limp. On rainy days, my leg aches with a dull, throbbing rhythm that reminds me of the metal inside. I will never run a marathon. I will never wear stilettos again. But I have never been happier. The Willows is now a thriving design studio and a sanctuary. Sebastian and I run it together. We help people modify their homes after accidents, illnesses, or just getting older. We show them that a disability doesn't mean the end of beauty. It just means a different kind of design. We got married last autumn, right here in the garden. I didn't walk down an aisle. We sat on a beautiful stone bench surrounded by asters and goldenrod, holding hands. It wasn't the Tuscan wedding I had planned in my old life. It was infinitely better. Sometimes, late at night, I look at the long, jagged scar running down my leg. I used to hate it. I used to think it was a mark of failure. Now, I trace it with my finger and smile. It is not a line of destruction. It is a map. It is the line that led me away from a life that was hollow and toward a life that is full. Tragedy takes away so much. It takes your health, your plans, your arrogance. But if you let it, it can give you something back. It can give you the truth. It strips away the fake friends and the shallow loves, leaving only what is real. I lost my ability to walk perfectly, but I learned how to stand on my own 2 feet. And to anyone reading this who feels like their life has been shattered into unfixable pieces, please hold on. The pieces can be put back together. The mosaic will look different than the picture you had in your head. It will be jagged and strange, but it will be beautiful. If this story resonated with you, or if you have ever had to rebuild your life after a sudden change, I would love to hear your thoughts. Please take a moment to subscribe to the channel. It helps me continue to write these stories for you. Question for the comments. Have you ever experienced a blessing in disguise? Something that seemed terrible at first, but led you to a better place? Or, what would you have done if you were in Genevieve's shoes when Harrison returned? Let's discuss below. I read every single comment. With love, Tubes of Odd AI.